right, let's dive into something kind of surprising today. Turning those ghost malls, the ones we all hung out at as kids, turning those into places where people could actually live.
Yeah. It's not just about nostalgia, though. This could actually be a real solution to some big problems.
That's what caught my eye, too. We've got this source, Transforming Abandoned Malls, a pathway to affordable housing and shelter solutions. And, well, it's pretty eye-opening. We're talking about tackling affordable housing, maybe even homelessness.
Exactly. And it gets even more interesting when you look at the economics. I mean, did you know that repurposing these existing structures could save developers a ton of money? Like up to 40% in construction costs compared to building from scratch.
Wow, okay, I'm listening. 40%, that's huge. But hold on a second. Before we go full HGTV on this, let's break down why malls would even work for this. They're basically just giant concrete boxes, right?
True, but you got to think about location. They're often sitting on prime real estate, already hooked up to utilities, and those wide open spaces, they're just begging for a creative redesign.
So it's like a giant Lego set, just waiting for someone to build something new.
Kinda. Think of it like a prefab house kit, but supersized. The infrastructure's already there, which could mean faster, cheaper solutions.
Makes sense. Now, our source outlines two main paths for this whole mall makeover thing. Let's start with the first one. Uh, Low-income housing development. What does that even look like?
Picture this. Those massive anchor stores we used to wander through turned into apartments, and the mall itself becoming like its own little neighborhood with shops and services. It's already happening in some places.
Oh, yeah. The source mentioned a success story in upstate New York, right? Did they actually turn a Sears into apartments?
Yep. 73 affordable apartments in a former Sears, and they even built more housing on the parking lot around it. It shows how flexible these spaces can be.
Wow, that's amazing. Okay, so that's a win for affordable housing.
All the Dewey.
It revitalizes a struggling area. Two birds, one mall.
Exactly. And get this project actually used a specific rule in the local zoning code to get approved faster because it had affordable housing.
Oh, so knowing the local rules can really help make these projects happen.
Huge help. Sometimes it's not just about the idea, but how well you know the rules of the game.
Okay, point taken. So we've got affordable housing covered. But what about that other path the source mentioned? Using malls for homeless shelters and support centers.
Yeah, and this is where the size of malls really becomes an asset. Instead of having services all over the place, you could have everything in one spot.
Like what kind of everything?
Think about it. Sleeping quarters, places to eat, medical care, job training, even counseling, all under one roof.
That's kind of mind-blowing, actually. Our source talked about the Denver Rescue Mission, right?
Yeah.
As a model for this.
Exactly. They've been using bigger facilities to combine shelter with all those support services, and it's been really effective in helping people get back on their feet.
I could see how that would make a huge difference.
Mhm.
One thing I hadn't even considered, being inside a mall with all that space, it might feel less institutional than a typical shelter.
That's a great point. The environment can play a huge role in how people feel and how well they respond to support services.
This all sounds really promising, but let's be real. There's got to be some downsides, some challenges. What are those?
Well, one of the biggest hurdles is zoning regulations. Most malls are zoned for commercial use, so getting approval for residential or shelter use can be, well, a nightmare.
Red tape. Shocked.
It's always there, lurking. Our source actually mentioned a study. It found that just changing a mall's designation from C2 commercial to residential can trigger all these environmental reviews.
So more time and more money.
Pretty much. And it's not just zoning. Funding these projects is another huge challenge. Even with the infrastructure already there, it still takes a lot of money.
Yeah, I can imagine. Especially for nonprofits trying to run shelters or build affordable housing.
Exactly. Public-private partnerships are going to be key to making a lot of these projects work financially.
Like, what would that look like?
Well, the source mentioned this case in California. A developer worked with the city and a community foundation to get the money for a mixed-income housing development in a former mall. City provided land, the foundation gave a low-interest loan, and the developer brought in the private investment.
So it's like everyone chips in.
It's all about finding creative ways to make the numbers work.
Okay, but what about the people who actually live near these malls? I can imagine some folks might not be thrilled about having a homeless shelter or a big affordable housing complex pop up in their backyard.
Oh, absolutely. Community opposition is a real thing. People worry about property values, traffic, safety, all that stuff.
Yeah, that's understandable. So how do you get around that?
Communication is key. Developers need to be upfront with the community explain the plans, address those concerns head on.
Makes sense. So it's not just about the buildings, but about the people too.
It's about building trust and making sure everyone feels like they're part of the process. One interesting thing the source mentioned was involving residents in the design process itself.
Like actually asking them what they want to see.
Exactly. There was a project in Illinois where they had these design workshops. Residents could give input on everything from apartment layouts to the types of community spaces they wanted.
That's smart. Get
Right.
people involved from the start. So all of this sounds amazing in theory, but is anyone actually doing it? Or is this just a bunch of pie in the sky ideas?
Oh, it's happening. States like California, New York, Illinois, they're all taking the lead, mostly because of their housing crises. They're trying out these mall redevelopment strategies, and we're seeing some really positive results.
So it's not just talk, there's real action happening.
Yeah, in fact, California passed a law, Assembly Bill 2011, to make it easier to convert commercial spaces into housing. It's a pretty clear sign that lawmakers are starting to take this seriously.
That's encouraging. So we've gone from dead malls to a potential fix for affordable housing and homelessness.
And it's not just about fixing problems, it's about seeing these spaces in a new light.
I love that. It's about ingenuity and resourcefulness. Pretty inspiring. But I want to get into the nitty-gritty. How are they actually pulling this off?
Let's dig into that. We've got some fascinating case studies that really show the innovation behind this movement. Okay, so let's get into the nuts and bolts of how you actually turn a mall into a place people want to live. You've got these massive spaces, often with no windows, designed for something totally different. How do you make them feel like home?
Yeah, that's a good question. I'm imagining those long hallways, dim lighting, all those closed-up storefronts. Not exactly cozy.
Right. But our source talks about bringing the outdoors in. It sounds kind of counterintuitive, but it's actually pretty clever.
Okay, how do they do that?
Architects and designers, they're getting really creative. They're opening up spaces, creating courtyards, atriums, places where natural light can flood in.
Ah, I see. So instead of feeling closed in, you get these open, airy spaces.
Exactly. Think rooftop gardens where people can grow their own food, balconies overlooking green spaces. It's all about bringing nature into the design.
That makes a lot of sense. But what about those concrete walls, the lack of windows? You can't just, knock those down, right?
Well, sometimes you can, but even when you can't, there are ways to work with them. Some designers are using those blank walls for murals or even vertical gardens.
Oh, that's cool. So you're bringing life and color to these otherwise drab spaces.
Sometimes they'll add skylights or even punch out sections of the exterior walls to create windows and balconies. It's all about bringing in light and air.
So they're basically turning these concrete fortresses inside out.
Pretty much. And it's not just about the physical space. The source also talks about incorporating features that help build a sense of community.
Okay, what does that look like in a mall setting? I'm having trouble picturing it.
Think communal kitchens, shared workspaces, fitness centers, maybe even libraries or art studios, spaces where people can interact and connect.
Ah, I get it. So instead of everyone being isolated in their apartments, you create opportunities for people to come together.
Exactly. There was one project in Ohio where they turned the old food court into a community center with a performance stage, a cafe, spaces for workshops and events.
That's awesome. It's like they're creating a whole mini neighborhood within the mall. And speaking of repurposing spaces, what about those loading docks? What do they do with those?
Oh, those can be really cool spaces. Imagine artist studios, maker spaces, even little business incubators, all tucked away in those former loading docks.
It's like every nook and cranny of the mall is being reimagined.
Yeah.
Now, I got to ask about sustainability. These malls were built in a time when energy efficiency wasn't exactly a top priority. How are they addressing that?
Sustainability is a huge focus in these projects. They're adding solar panels, green roofs, systems for collecting rainwater, reducing the environmental impact.
I'm glad to hear that. It's not just about meeting a need for housing, but doing it in a way that's good for the planet.
Absolutely. There was even one project in California where they installed a geothermal heating and cooling system.
Wow, geothermal. That's pretty high tech. So they're really going all in on making these projects sustainable.
Yeah, they are. But let's be honest, all this ambition comes with a price tag. How are they paying for all this?
That's the million-dollar question, right?
It's not a simple answer. The funding can come from a lot of different places. Government grants, tax credits, private investors, even donations.
It's a bit of a patchwork.
Yeah, the key is to get creative and find partners who can bring different resources to the table.
Okay, so walk me through that. How are these partnerships actually working?
Let's take a look at this project in Maryland. They wanted to build a mixed-income housing development in an old mall. So the developer teamed up with the local housing authority and a community development financial institution, a CDFI.
Okay, and what did those groups bring to the table?
The housing authority helped low-income residents afford the rent with vouchers. The CDFI offered a low-interest loan, and the developer brought in private investment to fill the gaps.
So it's like everyone's working together to make it happen.
It's all about collaboration. But at the end of the day, it's not just about the money. It's about the people.
Yeah, you can't forget about the human element. We're talking about creating homes for people, not just filling empty spaces.
That's such an important point. It's about creating communities where people can thrive.
So it's not just about putting a roof over someone's head, but about providing support, opportunities, a sense of belonging.
Exactly. That means thinking about things like access to healthcare, childcare, job training, transportation. One project in Washington state partnered with a local community college to offer on-site job training and education programs for residents.
Wow, that's incredible. Equipping people with the skills they need to succeed.
Right. It's about empowerment, not just handouts. And it's not just about the individuals, it's about the impact on the whole community.
How so?
When you bring new residents and businesses into an area that's been struggling, it can have this ripple effect. It can boost the local economy, make the area safer, create a more vibrant and diverse community for everyone.
So these mall makeovers are kind of like a catalyst for positive change.
Exactly. They're addressing the need for affordable housing, revitalizing neighborhoods, and empowering individuals.
It's a win-win-win. It really shows what's possible when people start thinking outside the box. But I'm sure our listeners are dying to hear about some specific projects that are actually doing this.
Let's get to those. We've got some real-world examples that showcase the incredible creativity and innovation happening in this movement.
Okay, lay it on me. What are some examples where these ideas are actually making a difference?
Let's start in Springfield, Missouri. They had this dying mall, and they completely transformed it. It's called The Collaborative now, and it's really living up to the name.
The collaborative. Okay, I like it already. What's so collaborative about it?
Well, it's got all kinds of stuff going on. Affordable apartments for seniors, a health center, childcare, even a job training center run by a local nonprofit.
Wow, so it's like a one-stop shop for, well, pretty much everything?
That's the idea. Create a place where people can get the support they need all in one place.
Did they run into any roadblocks along the way?
Oh, sure. Funding was a big one, like it is with most of these projects. They had to pull together money from all sorts of places. Grants, tax credits, private investors, the whole works.
Sounds complicated.
It definitely takes some work, but they had a lot of support from local businesses and community leaders. They saw how this project could really benefit the whole area.
Yeah, that makes a big difference. When everyone's on board, you can accomplish amazing things. What about the people who live there? What are they saying about the collaborative?
They love it. They talk about the sense of community, how convenient it is to have everything right there, the peace of mind that comes with having that support system. It's created a real sense of belonging.
That's so great to hear. They took this symbol of consumerism, a mall, and turned it into a place where people feel connected and supported. Amazing. Okay, Springfield is a tough act to follow, but I'm sure you've got more success stories.
Head up north with me to St. Paul, Minnesota. They took an old mall there and turned it into an arts and culture hub.
Wait, an arts center in a mall. I'm trying to picture that.
It's pretty cool. They kept some of those quirky mall features, but they created this amazing space for the arts.
So, like, what kind of stuff is going on there?
They've got studios for artists, dance companies, theater groups, all in those former retail spaces. And the old food court, that's a performance space now. They have concerts, poetry slams, all sorts of stuff.
So it's like they're nurturing creativity and giving artists a place to shine.
Exactly. And it's had this incredible ripple effect on the whole neighborhood. People are coming from all over to check it out. It's given the area a real boost.
I love that. So they're supporting the arts, revitalizing the community. It's really amazing what they've done.
And it shows that there's no one right way to do this.
Yeah.
Each community can find its own path, figure out what works best for them.
I'm seeing a pattern here. It's about looking at these spaces with fresh eyes, seeing the potential, not just the problems.
It's a total mindset shift. And it's not just about urban planning, it's a lesson for life, right? Sometimes the best solutions come from rethinking the way we see things.
Totally agree. Well, I think that just about wraps up our deep dive into the world of mall makeovers.
We've seen the challenges, the possibilities, and the incredible things that are happening when people put their minds to it.
It's been a really inspiring journey. We've seen how these abandoned malls can be transformed into vibrant community spaces, places where people can live, work, create, connect. It's a testament to human ingenuity and our capacity for positive change. And on that note, we'd love to hear from you. What are your thoughts on this? What would you like to see happen in your community? Maybe you've got a brilliant idea for that old mall down the street. Share your thoughts, your dreams, your visions for the future. Because who knows, maybe your spark of inspiration will be the catalyst for the next big transformation. Thanks for joining us, and keep those creative juices flowing.